Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Musu Gaming here, and today I'll be doing another episode of Unofficial Commander Spotlight featuring Thutmose III. Thutmose is an early game archer commander that does relatively low AoE damage with his first active skill, but then again is compensated with pretty good rest of his set, which makes him pretty strong option for you at earlier stage of the game, for archers that is. And let's take a look at his skills and why that's the case. His first skill, Brave Ruler, with rage requirement of 1000, deals direct damage to up to 3 enemy targets in a fan with damage factor of 1000, and at every additional target hit thereafter reduces the damage to each target by 15%. So this is a 3 target AoE that also does healing reduction. Healing reduction in very early game is not really that strong, but then again, as you get into KvK Season 1, this is useful for combating, let's say, something like Richard, because healing reduction does really help you kill that Richard. So being an archer commander, this is pretty good skill, but then again, the damage factor could be a lot better because that 1000 damage factor, given the fact that it gets reduced by each additional target that you actually hit, is in all honesty worse than Sun Tzu's active skill. But let's take a look at his rest of his skills. So his second skill is Empire Builder. This commander's archer, so this gives you 15% attack, 10% march speed, which is both good. But then again, the third line, it gives you 15% more damage while outside of Alliance territory. So usually most of your battle will not really happen in your Alliance territory. I think, well, even if this is a half and half scenario, right? This is a huge buff that allows you to deal 15% more damage, and this is all damage. And I don't think there is any commander in this game at this earlier part of the game that gives you 15% outside Alliance territory damage. And so this is a very, very huge passive skill that this commander actually has that would really, really amplify the power level of this commander once you actually max this passive skill. Now let's take a look at his third skill. So if this commander troop is on the map, so it's not for garrisoning rather, but it's just while you're on the map, while you're open fielding most likely, or rallying that is. Archer units gets 10% defense, good. Whenever this troop launches the basic attack, it has 10% chance to increase the skill damage the target receives by 15%, with cooldown of for 3 seconds, with cooldown of 8 seconds. So the cooldown on this one is pretty long, but then again, skill damage taken increases is huge, 15%. And for a commander this early in the game, this is pretty decent skill. If this was like 30%, like let's say Minamoto, he would be really, really good. But then again, decent skill for you to actually have. It's better than not having it for sure, because that 10% archer defense, you don't really get it anywhere else. So it's pretty good skill. But what makes him really strong is his force skill. So force skill, vast territory. So this commander's troop takes 4% less, 10% less counterattack damage, and whenever it is hit with a basic attack, it has 10% chance to deal direct damage of 700 damage to his attacker. So this is a really strong skill in my opinion, because when you're hit with a basic attack, so archers actually have pretty... So in the earlier part of the game, when this commander is more relevant, you're really more likely to be swarmed by a lot of cavalry, because of the fact that you're archer, and cavalry counters archer, and archers are slower than cavalry by default. So this skill right here is almost guaranteed for you to actually trigger. And even if you're 1v1 dueling or rallying and stuff, this force skill will always almost trigger. So I think this is a very, very strong skill. This makes his power level, still relevant despite having lower AoE skill. So again, 15% outside territory damage, as well as additional damage factor for getting hit. So this applies to counterattacks, I believe, too. So really, really strong first skill, third skill, and fourth skill makes him, I think, the only hope of Archer Legendary's commander during pre-KvK season. And his expertise skill, this commander's archer units take 5% less damage from infantry, and also whenever you use an active skill, it gains 30% bonus to normal damage. Not the best skill in the world, but it's still going to really help you just kill those infantry earlier on. So my overall kind of evaluation of his skill set is that his first skill, if this damage factor was like 1500, this commander would have been perfect in my opinion, but it's 1000. It is what it is, but his other skills kind of make up for the losses that he has in this first skill's damage factor. And which is why I think like he is the hope of archers during pre-KvK into I think even into KvK1 because you need someone to pair with Isangge. But that's pretty much what Thutmose does in Rise of Kingdoms. And let's take a look at how you actually can get him. And this is why I can't give him a really high rating at the end of the day, is because he's a gold key commander that is only available to gold keys only. So there are some commanders that are in the gold key that are more available to you by default. For example, Charles Martel is available to you for the first 3 Mightiest Governor Commander events as well as gold key. So Charles Martel is a lot easier for you to get than Thutmose. KvK, for example, also there's a lot of like I think paid events or like gem event that allows you to get sculptures of KvK. Also, his sculptures does appear a lot more in the scenario rewards. So so those two are a lot more available to you than Thutmose by default. But if you want to expertise Thutmose in pre-season of conquest, pre-KvK as well as KvK1, you need to invest a lot of your gold heads. Unless you're a mega whale who can unlock 10,000 gold keys to actually unlock him. And he's a relatively recent commander, so I don't have Thutmose really to like 5-5-1 even. But then again, his accessibility is not really the best, is what I'm trying to say. But he does have a museum buff. Let's go ahead and take a look at his museum buff. I probably don't even have it, but let's take a look at his museum buff. So he does have 65%, so 45% archer attack, 20% archer health. But in all honesty, you're not going to be able to use him during Season of Conquest. Even if you're archer maining, I really don't recommend that you use your relic coins and exhibit coins to unlock this. In all honesty, you're better off just unlocking other commanders that are archer relative. So yeah, he does have pretty strong museum, but at the end of the day, his damage factor of 1000 is still too low for you to be used at all, especially if it's a cone AoE. If it was a circular AoE of 1000, I think that would be a little better story. I don't think it's still going to be used, but then again, his museum buff, it's not enough to revive him for a Season of Conquest. So use him for pre-KvK, KvK1, and maybe into KvK2 if you don't have Edward Woodstock or Tomeris unlock. But pre-KvK, KvK1, this is your only option as the primary archer march in my opinion. And so his kits are pretty strong, but then again, not so strong as you go down the road. So let's take a look at the best pairing for Thutmose in each stage of the game. So pre-KvK, the obvious and most accessible option is Kusunoki. He will be the archer AoE commander that does decent damage in AoE in a cone. So the area that you'll deal damage with Thutmose is actually going to be matching. Med is probably the best option that you have, along with Sun Tzu, because Sun Tzu has 20% skill damage buff, although you're going to miss out on some infantry stats that he gives. AoE wise, if you have Thutmose and Sun Tzu paired, if you're not running Charles Martel, Sun Tzu is not a bad option. I would say Med is still a better option for you because of the fact that Sun Tzu has to be used for infantry. So I'll just use 5511 Med if you have him. If you are looking for additional single damage nuking, you can use Elcid or Frederick. If you whatever skill levels that you have higher of, I would actually suggest Frederick more if you're looking to go the single damage route, because I believe the total potential damage factor of Frederick is like almost 2400 damage factor, which is a lot better than Elsid. So if you have Frederick, you can use him. Elsid does give you a little more archer damage buff, but then again, I think if you're looking to nuke something down, Frederick is better, I think. KvK 1, just forget about all those commander. KvK 1 and KvK 2, you should just use Isongye. So use Thutmose as primary, use Isongye as secondary, and that should be your one main archer march, period. No one else can compete as best pairing for Thutmose, in my opinion, because Thutmose is made for open field AoE damage, and no one can support that role better than Yi Sung-ge until you enter Season of Conquest. So KvK 1 and KvK 2, best case, best pairing for Thutmose is going to be Yi Sung-ge. Season of Conquest, just don't use him. As I said, his museum is there. It's not strong enough for you to use him in Season of Conquest. You have things like Zhuge Liang and Herman Prime and Ashurbanipal and what else, like Nebu even. So like, don't use Thutmose. Do not use Thutmose for Season of Conquest. I'll just give him a Lubu. Don't use him. Do not use. So yeah, that's for the best pairing for Thutmose. Let's go ahead and move on to the final rating of Thutmose. All right, now moving on to the final rating for Thutmose. So Charles Martel is 4-star, Minamoto is 3.5 stars. So Thutmose, I'll give him a 3-star. With commentary, expensive, but the only hope of archers in the early game. So expensive because you have to either open a lot of gold keys, which is going to be super expensive, or you have to invest a lot of gold heads. So if you want to use Thutmose during the pre-KvK or KvK 1, you have to make some commitment to Thutmose and archers combined. But with the release of commander swap events nowadays, that did become a lot easier, so investing in him is not going to go totally into waste. So I recommend you expertising him if you're going to use him, and then just swapping him out with some other commanders like Zhuge Liang or more relevant archer commanders in the future. But again, he's the only hope of archers in the early game. His skill set is pretty good for every single skills. He does not have a better alternative for open field AoE damage dealers. So in my opinion, pre-KvK, KvK 1, you have to use Thutmose if you are going to main archers. Alright, that's pretty much it for the video. If you liked the video, please go ahead and drop a thumbs up, as well as subscribe if you want to see more contents like this in the future for Rise of Kingdoms. Alright, that's it for me, and thank you, and as always, see you on the next video.